temperature rise will bring widespread devastation and unprecedented extreme weather.
New coronavirus cases emerge across the country.
Obesity rates have more than doubled in kids.
Cape Town is running out of water.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Vikas Pota. I'm the founder and CEO of T4. We've been having a series of conversations with friends from around the world who are experts, who are academics, who are researchers, also who are school leaders on the 5 categories of the World's Best School Prizes, which we launched in October. Today, I'm really pleased that we focus on the final category, which is about supporting healthy lives. And, when we think about, the role of education in schools, developing healthy lifestyles, we know is key to ensuring students and their communities thrive. Throughout the Sustainable Development Goals, many of these are linked to helping students and the community be healthy, such as no poverty, zero hunger, good health, and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, and such forth. All these SDGs foundationally start with schools, families, and their communities. Further, health is a human right, as is stated by, the Director General of UNESCO, Audrey Azoulay, who says education and health are interdependent basic human rights for all, at the core of any human right and essential to social and economic development. So this category, the supporting healthy lives category, seeks an integrated whole school approach. Students, teachers, school leadership and staff, community, businesses, and NGOs working together on shared priorities to improve the lives of everyone. We think it has to be inclusive and equitable for all children to thrive. They need to feel safe, loved, and capable of expressing their authentic selves. It not only focuses on academic success, but it understands that the whole child development is key. They focus on interdependent growth from all aspects of development, including the cognitive, emotional, social, physical, and academic. Now, for this conversation and for the previous conversations, I've been fortunate that we've been able to bring forward such experts and school leaders from around the world who help us make sense of the categories and the criteria that we have for this prize. And the purpose is quite simply as when you go to complete your application forms, you're just a little bit better briefed as to what we're looking for. So today, I'm really pleased that we have amongst us James Toop. James is the CEO of Bite Back 2030. And James, I'm going to ask you to say a little bit about that in a second, but welcome to this live stream.
Thanks, Vikas. Good to be with you.
And we also have an old friend of ours, I'm sure she won't be pleased when I call her an old friend, but a friend nonetheless, Vijita Patel, who is the principal of the Swiss Cottage School in London, and quite a prolific state-funded school for special needs education in particular. Welcome, Vijita.
Very warm welcome back.
And so, before we go any further with regards to this category, I wanted to just make sure that those that are watching this either live or in the future, understand that there are two segments to the application process of this particular prize. The first is our criteria, or rather questions, that we want you to be able to answer regardless of which category that you apply for. So they could equally apply to the innovation category or the overcoming adversity category. And these are general, metrics or criteria that we want to make sure that you are very focused on being able to answer fully. So the first is, can your school demonstrate a commitment to excellence? It may sound like a generic, very general question, but it is very important. These are the world's best school prizes. They're not just the world's any school prizes. And so we want you to be able to demonstrate your commitment to excellence. The next is, has your school developed trailblazing practices, processes, and pedagogy school-wide? This is a school prize. It's not a teacher prize. Be very careful about when you approach this, saying that we're looking at you as an organization, as an institution. What have you done school-wide that has actually had an impact? The third is that, I'd love to take your word for it, but do you have evidence to support your application? That forms quantitative and qualitative. So when someone writes an application form for their school, give us data, help us understand how you measure what good looks like, and actually tell us what the results of those exercises are. Can your school demonstrate the impact on the experience and life chance of your students? And I think this is a really important question that we seek to make sure that every single school, regardless of category, answers. But the most important question, as I see it, in all of this is the next one. Now, before I tell you what it is, remember that the whole initiative seeks to surface incredible practice from around the world so that other schools can learn from you. So we ask these questions very specifically. What can other schools learn from you in this regard? And so unless you're able to answer that, you're not going to be successful in this process. So I want to just make sure that you understand that these are the general pointers that we want to give everyone as to how they apply for the World's Best School Prizes. Now, in specific, we're talking about, this particular supporting healthy lives category. And I want James to actually talk a little bit about the work of Bite Back, because I think when we think about supporting healthy lives, we either think of one thing or another, but we don't think of it as a whole. And so James's current organization has been focused on a particular area, which I think often gets left behind in terms of our thinking. And so James, please tell us a little bit about your work.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So Bite Back 2030, we launched 2 years ago, and we are all about building a movement of young people who want to work for healthier food environments. And our ultimate goal is to halve childhood obesity by 2030. The organisation, we set it up with Jamie Oliver, the TV chef and campaigner, who's been working on this issue for a number of years. But we felt that what we needed to do was talk about the issue in a different way. So, up until now, the narrative around obesity is hugely stigmatizing. The culture around the conversation is very much one of, it's about individual willpower. It's about blaming the individual. If you're overweight, it's because you're too lazy. So we wanted to tell a different narrative, and actually, this is integral to child health. There are lots of researchers who will say that the gut is the second brain, and actually, what we're eating affects so much about how we develop cognitively and our learning as well. So we talk about this as the right of every child to be healthy, to have access to a healthy diet no matter where they live. But also we felt that we needed a fresh voice. So Jamie's been working on this for a number of years, but we felt that the voice of young people coming through really powerfully could help change the debate. And so we think that diet, nutrition, and health is integral to supporting a healthy life of young people. There's lots of studies out there that show that having a great breakfast drives cognitive achievement as well. So that's our sort of focus. I could say a lot more, but I'll stop there.
You're very kind. Thank you so much. And Vijita, I mean, when you think about schools, and obviously this in many parts of the world, there's this incessant pursuit of academic achievement that really guides, and understandably so. But the reason why I wanted to have to actually bring you on is because your school in particular has done some quite fabulous things around this subject. But tell us a little bit about your school, and tell us when we talk about this particular category, what it means to a school like yours.
I think it resonates with what James has just described. We're really motivated to unlock the fullest potential of our children and young people. We're a special needs school. All of the pupils are identified with special educational needs and disabilities. They're viewed as highly vulnerable and are quite marginalized in their local community and in their sort of potential to inform and shape the local society. So a lot of our mission is about ensuring their talents and their unique qualities are really recognized and understood in the local community, and that they're actually contributors to society because they have a lot to offer. What's fantastic about this prize, and I think is important for every school to recognize how actually they hold the features of being the world's best school for supporting healthy lives, is that if we want our pupils to thrive, if we want them to engage in learning, this is only possible when we put the right culture and ethos into place that gives them that safe and secure sense physically, emotionally, socially, behaviorally, and mentally, so that their well-being is what is giving them that step for readiness to learn and to be able to engage with learning. I think what's fundamental for us as a school and a defining feature is that our approach to our school provision, the way that we work with a number of stakeholders, is led by ensuring those factors that are going to give a safe and stimulating environment for the pupils is actually a fundamental, non-negotiable, and the innovation comes through that, so that we know that there's an equitable access to a safe and secure learning environment.
Absolutely. And, when we talk about this particular category, we have 4 criteria, which I want to go through very briefly and ask both of you actually to some degree as to what you make of it. So, but before I talk about these 4 criteria, I also want to make sure that everyone understands that what we're not saying is that you must meet all criteria, although that would be amazing. What we're saying is that if you even achieve or think that you have significant things to talk about in one of the criteria that I'm going to mention, then you should apply, because we recognize that this is sometimes a tall order when you say that you've got to meet all these things. If the idea is to surface great practice from the schools, from the grassroots, as it were, even if you are phenomenal at one, please do look to applying. So the first criterion that we have, and James, I'm going to come to you for this one, or rather, I'll go to Vijita as a school leader on this one. Teaching and learning. So can you tell us a little bit about this criterion, Vijita?
It's fantastic to see teaching and learning placed at the heart of the criteria for the prize, because when we think about education, how it's actually, as the slogan for this fantastic award features, building back stronger societies. This is about us thinking about how we're actually empowering pupils to be able to develop their ownership and how they're going to be able to engage in the learning through very sort of clear and carefully considered success criteria. Now, in a classroom, that is thinking about the very creative ways that schools have an identity and a characteristic on what learning looks like. That challenging learning can actually also be engaging, fun, and anchored in play in a way that is building self-esteem, sense of self, and a child's confidence in exploring and understanding their identity. I think this criteria is fantastic because it's placing well-being as a non-negotiable. This is no longer about well-being being an aspect that is considered as something that should be considered as an addition. It's actually placing it at the heart of what that classroom provision is. And when schools can articulate that vision for learning, placing well-being at the heart of that, it's quite exciting to think about the very creative approaches to pedagogy that are going to come through the prize.
Fantastic. And so for this criterion, we actually have some guiding questions, which I just want to go through so that people understand, those that are watching and those that are considering applying, get a better appreciation of this criterion. So what we ask is, does your school have resources, activities, curricula where students gain age-appropriate knowledge and experiences that help them build the skills to improve their health and well-being? Does the school have play as an integral part of how it approaches education? Does the school have physical activity as a priority in designing the teaching and learning of all subjects, especially at elementary and middle school levels? Does the school utilize restorative practices to help students learn and build healthy relationships and a sense of self? And does the school participate in the promotion and implementation of inclusive and equity-focused initiatives that promote wellness? And I think all of these are quite important. Our second criterion, James, I come to you for this, which is around collaborative leadership in practice. And what you won't know, prior to Bite Back 2030, James worked for as a CEO of a huge institution that focused on school leadership. And so, James, do you want to speak a little bit about this one?
Yeah, so I'm obviously would be biased, but I think unless it's integrated into the school at a leadership level, the rest of it won't filter through and flow through. So when you talked about being integrated, Vikas, at the start, I think that leaders have to put health into their strategic plans, think about it consciously. Design, it might even be things like HR policies, or it might be, for the wellness of staff, it might be thinking about the length of break times and sort of, how young people get that opportunity to have some breathing room it might also be looking at the curriculum, so I think the teaching and learning only happens if it's reflected through the, the leadership and the way that that's developed. So it really, is really critical that through the processes, the programs, the structures, the systems in the school, you can really start to see how health is prioritized. And I think the other bit that's key here is the role modeling. So how school leaders, teachers, adults in the school role model for pupils. There's healthy practices, the honest conversations about it as well. So
on this, there are some guiding questions as well, and I won't go through them all, because if you go and want to apply for these prizes, you'll be sent, our framework, a guidance document that actually goes through all these. But here's a few guiding questions that we include in this criterion. So, for example, does a school have a healthy, proactive approach to managing social media usage for its students? Does the school have health promotion programs for staff, nutrition and food safety programs, opportunities for physical education and recreation, and programs for counseling, social support, and mental health promotion? And so those are just some of the guiding questions that we have that appear for this criterion. I go to the third, and I go to Vijita again this time, which is around social and physical environments. Do you want to speak a little bit about this and what the impact on supporting healthy lives is through this?
Very important in this third criterion is the fact that we're thinking about how those quality relationships are actually enabled through the way that the school thinks about the way that environments are structured and that quality of access. Now, if we think about the reality that, schools across countries will have differences in basic access alongside those that may be more given. So again, it's about context. If you're in a school that, you're really trying to ensure that those basics are in place, you've got a chance to shine in what you have done in order to ensure that for your pupils. Whereas, in a school like ours, where we're very privileged to have a government building that has those basics as a given, what are we doing? What are we challenging ourselves to think about if that's in place? What do we put in place to ensure that actually what we're doing with the social and physical environments is challenging our pupils to really develop their emotional well-being in light of the context of our school? I think it's really important the way that this one is looking at that local and community context. We're thinking about how they're sort of able to think about that social and physical environment in terms of the locality of the school. This is an urban school in London. So what do we do to ensure our pupils are engaging with rural areas that are not their same locality day in, day out? And the same may be the case for a school in the flip scenario. What's great about this criterion, it's very much ensuring that we're thinking about that community cohesion piece, the participation of different community stakeholders in being able to shape and co-design what those environments are.
Yeah, no, I fully obviously agree with everything you said, and I've been to your school, so I understand how that works. And so these are some of the guiding questions that we have for this criteria, which is, does the school prioritize in their teaching and learning, natural settings, the environment and the local ecology? Does the school strive to provide a healthy environment? Does the school have basic amenities such as sanitation, air cleanliness, and healthy food? Does the school advocate for and participate in community development initiatives that improve social and physical environments? And we take that for granted in terms of, in some contexts, but, to make the assumption that it is everywhere. And again, I can think of schools maybe in my own country over here that actually have a challenge in this regard as well. And so it's not necessarily that this particular criterion is just looking at schools that don't have, and you think about middle income and low income context, but also in high income context. We shouldn't be so complacent in that regard. And the final criterion is around home, school, and community engagement. And and actually both of you can, I think, weigh in on this. But James, I'll come to you first. Do you have a thought on this criterion?
Yeah, I mean, I think much like Vijita said around the physical and social environment of the school, we often advocate for schools being health zones. In some ways you can control that environment, but and make it as healthy as it can be. But we know that a lot of time young people will be spending out of school, and so what you can do in school potentially. The effects might be undermined if the environment outside of school is not conducive to health. And actually a lot of the things like social media, unhealthy food, a lot of young people do physical activity in school, but then don't do it outside of school. So in this criterion, what we're really looking at is how the leadership of the school and some of those great practices happening in school start to have a ripple effect into families, communities, and that the leader's viewpoint starts to go beyond the school gates out into the community, so that young people are experiencing that all through the day once they leave school.
For sure. And some of the guiding questions that we have for this particular one are, does your school have education and programs for self-regulation, mindfulness, positive view, healthy social interactions, social emotional skills, healthy relationships, and or intrapersonal development? Does a school have students being active in all its forms programmed into the day, created opportunities with community organizations and partnerships? Does the school engage, collaborate, and partner with health and education officials, teachers, teacher unions, students, parents, health providers, and community leaders? And the last guidance that we provide is, does the school have community and school-based services that support and promote student and staff health and well-being? Now, Vijita, when I think about your school, you actually have the Department of Health in your building because you're a special needs school. But when you think about wider, what do you have to say about this criterion?
I think it's really important that there's a consideration around the authentic stakeholder voice when considering this criterion. So the voice of pupils and families themselves, how that's actually shaped some of those community partnerships, because schools really do listen. They want to be hubs. They want to support that well-being focus for families as well. When they're thinking about that in terms of supporting healthy lifestyles, there's such great examples of the partnerships that have been made in local communities. And there's a consideration in this criterion on, as Vikas said, bringing it back to what is some of the best practice? What is the learning that can be shared? What's strategic here? How is the school enabling and empowering educators to be able to lead on some of that partnership development would be a curiosity for me as well.
Great stuff. So Vijita, if I was a school, how should I approach applying for these prizes?
First of all, go straight to the website. Ensure that you know what the website is. Ensure that you know that the deadline's March 2022. Get all the information that's there. Understand the criteria. I think it's really important, we certainly advocate this for all of our processes as a school. Anything like this is a great opportunity for self-assessment. It's fantastic. There's a great sort of opportunity here to win this extraordinary prize. But actually, the greatest prize is probably the process of going through that self-reflection as a school to really think about those criteria and to use this process to actually help us self-assess where we are, what we take pride in, and what some of those next steps might be. It's a great opportunity to actually bring different groups across the school into the process. Because right now, when we think about post-pandemic, what's fantastic is to think about how, if we were a school that was applying, how I would involve our families, our parents, carers, different sort of community group members, the pupils themselves, teachers, and different colleagues across the school, to be able to reflect on what we've done and to be able to take stock on what we are taking great pride on, but also what we're challenging ourselves to think about. I think the beauty of the World's Best Prize is that it's actually empowering us as educators to be able to take a step into that self-assessment process to really ensure that actually each of us are winning the prize as we go through that self-assessment process. And that's a very powerful process because it's placing that reflection in our hands alongside some very sort of evidence-informed criteria.
Thank you for sharing that, Vijita. And the reason that we've set up a school-based prize on these kinds of connective tissue matters, which are not so straightforward. When you think about, I want to be the world's best school, you often think about mathematics or English or science or those kinds of academic subjects. The reason we're doing this is because we want all schools to be stronger so that we lift the boat, as it were, for everyone. And we can, by surfacing this incredible expertise that resides, we will be creating public goods that actually other schools can actually understand how they too can replicate the journeys of the school finalists or the school prize finalists. And so that's how we think about it. James, I want to ask you in conclusion, when you think about being a school leader like Vijita is, for example, what advice do you have for school leaders when they approach this category in particular as a form of encouragement? We'd love to hear some words from you.
I think that school leaders do such an amazing job. And I think that, as Vijita said, like win the prize or not win the prize, I think that the process is incredibly valuable. And I think what we're also going to get from this is, you're not just doing this for yourself, you're also contributing to a body of knowledge about how healthy schools are developed. I think we've seen so much advance forward in learning about pedagogy and teaching, and but actually I feel this area is relatively sort of uncodified and untested up until now. So I think when you submit, we're going to learn something and share that knowledge about the great practice you're doing with a much wider audience. So hopefully that can continue to push this prize area forward in its knowledge and development into the future.
Yeah, on that note, we conclude by sharing with everyone that the deadline for the prizes is the 1st of March. And so that may feel like a million miles away, given that we're now at the back end of December, going into a Christmas break. And I know how frenetic schools are in this time and just general society is. But over the Christmas break, I would encourage you all to think about, well, how do I approach the World's Best School Prizes? Because when I come back in January, I should think about, well, okay, I've watched the videos, the briefings, I've read the documents. I bring my school leadership team together, perhaps, and actually discuss which category we want to apply for, or maybe all of them, and then carefully think about the application form, completing the application form, and seeing it through. Now, if you are not an English speaker, because in this first year we're saying that all applications are in English, if you're not an English speaker or not confident about writing in English, you can reach out to us. And we have ambassadors from around the world who have said that we will help schools who are not conversant or fluent in English, help them navigate this process and actually complete these forms. So that's also a resource that we have for you. We really want to make sure that all schools participate. And I wish you all very well in this process. Remember that we do this with the ambition of actually building an incredible community of schools around the world who are focused on best practice and sharing of best practices. That's what this effort is. And on that note, I want to thank Vijita and James for joining me today. And I look forward to the next opportunity. Thank you both for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.